through our TechX vertical at Venture Center. I hope you enjoyed the video. We will be posting it on our YouTube channel also, and you will be seeing some few highlights over this last 2-3 days as we race towards the year end. So let us begin today's session. We have our speaker who has joined us, Dr. Premnath here. Today's topic is setting up student entrepreneurship club. So this is more focused on how to set up a student entrepreneurship club at your own institutions, at your own organizations. So let me briefly introduce Dr. Premnath. Dr. Premnath is a scientist at the Polymer Science and Engineering Division at NCL and is also the founder director at Venture Center. He is a technology developer, innovation and incubation manager, startup mentor, and a co-founder of 2 medtech startups. Dr. Premnath has provided leadership for teams that have won national awards for technology development, for intellectual property management, and business incubation. He is a chemical engineer by training. He is alumnus of MIT in the US, and in 2022, he has also received the IIT-Bombay Distinguished Alumnus Award. He has been a Chevening Technology Enterprise Scholar in Cambridge, UK. So with this brief introduction, welcome Dr. Premnath to the session and handing over the session to you.
Thank you, Mugdha. Thanks a lot. Let's start with the slides. Just let me know once it comes up. Visible?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining in. It's a little bit of a holiday season right now, and people who have joined in, I'm sure, are very interested. So let's start with the topic. Today's topic is setting up a student entrepreneurship club. And let's begin by, so let me first just explain that, just 1 minute. Yeah. So today's discussion is a little bit of nuts and bolts of starting a student entrepreneurship club, and I'll try and share what we learned along the way. We have tried to help a few student entrepreneurship clubs come up, and whatever learnings we have, I've tried to put it down there, but it's also sort of meant to be a nuts and bolts guidebook in a manner of speaking. So please bear with me if some things look a little detailed, but I think those of you who either as faculty are setting up student entrepreneurship clubs or students who are setting it up on their own, both will find some of those points useful and interesting. So we are here on this particular platform, which is only one theme series on innovation management awareness, which is being run by TechX. And thanks to all the organizers who have put in efforts to make this happen week on week or month on month, so that there can be insights on various different topics which can be shared with a larger community. So let's begin with the topic. So today's talk, the outline is as follows. So I'll first talk briefly about a few examples of student entrepreneurship clubs which I am familiar with, put down a few illustrative activities so that people know what I'm talking about. Let's look at the goals of a student entrepreneurship club, and let's also talk a little bit about why students themselves should take a lot of initiative and interest in doing this. Our 8-step guide to launching a student entrepreneurship club, we put it together because there was a request from some clubs which are remote trying to set it up, and some funding schemes briefly which support student entrepreneurship club and activities. So let's begin with this first, which are examples of student entrepreneurship clubs. So here are 3 which we have been involved with in some way or the other. On the left is the NCL Technology and Entrepreneurship Club, founded around 2007. It's led by PhD students. NCL is largely composed of graduate students, postgraduate students. So this has a slightly different flavor to it. All of them are research students focused on finishing a PhD. Maybe we'll look at science-based entrepreneurship if they are interested in entrepreneurship. On the other hand, IISER Pune, has a association, a group called the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Cell, EIC, and it's led by undergraduate students. It was founded in around 2016. Here, the undergraduate students bring in a very different orientation, focus, priorities compared to perhaps some other institutions. And the third one that I've listed here is in one of India's most vibrant e-cells, which is the IIT Bombay's e-cell. And this was founded in 1998. By the way, the e-cell in IIT Bombay was founded even before the incubator came up formally, and it's led by undergraduate students, and it has a very strong track record of running very large events and activities, and that's something of a benchmark for aspiring entrepreneurship cells in India today. So, of course, that said, different clubs can have different focus areas, and also the scale at which they wish to do it. All will depend upon the size of the institution, what the student population's goals are, ambitions are, all of those. So everything will be different, right? So let's just look at these three, and let's look at what are the kind of events and activities they've been running, right? So the Technology and Entrepreneurship Club at NCL, the focus has been on talks, awareness, inspiration, some amount of networking, some amount of workshops, some amount of soft skills and professional development related events, some competitions. Since all of them are PhD students, there was also this 3MT, which is a 3 minutes thesis kind of competition, which was organized by TEC and done very well. And site visits and interactions, right? So these have been broadly the kind of things that, say, an organization like TEC at NCL has been doing. On the other hand, the EIC at ICER has, of course, also looked at talks, awareness, inspiration, workshops, but they have also looked at certain competitions, participating in certain competitions, setting up certain competitions. And interestingly, they wanted to also look at building a maker space. At that time, ICER did not have its own maker space, and the student group decided to do it themselves. And they've also focused on visits to entrepreneurship focused events, which I think even TEC has done. ECell at IIT-B, on the other hand, IIT Bombay, has been running very large events, and they see a role which is beyond the institution, also promoting entrepreneurship across campuses. So many of their activities are very large in scale. For example, eSummit is said to be Asia's largest student-run business summit. So it's where a lot of young business people meet, get together, and also meet for several experts and role models that they otherwise would hear of. But it's a very large event. Similarly, Eureka, which is Asia's largest business model competition, as I think one of the magazines called it, is another such large event that IIT Bombay team, the eCell runs. This is largely student run. It's not driven by faculty or by full-time people. And there are also other areas, other things they do, like competitions for school students, competition for college teams, outreach and workshop across India, matchmaking, internships with eCell and startups. That means interns, young interns wanting to work with eCell, all of the startups. Lectures and other events, and interaction with startup founders, articles, blogs, magazines, and sometimes some special interest group. I saw that they seem to be doing something which is for children from disadvantaged backgrounds. So that those are special interest group activities that a certain eCell might take up depending upon what the team thinks is important, right? So this is broadly examples. So we saw these three examples and what they are doing as well. You can see there's a difference in the character as well. The size of the student population is very different in each of these institutions as well. So You can do things at different scales. You can do things with different focus areas and different objectives. So let's continue further and think about what the goals of such student entrepreneurship clubs could be, right? In any such activity, which is of not-for-profit nature and is a nature of a club, typically we tend to think of it in terms of the activities resulting in certain outputs which eventually create some impact. So it's important to, when you're thinking about the goals, to think about what impact one is targeting, what one wants to achieve, and what will be those activities which will make those possible. So in the intermediary stage are outputs, and these are the outputs which you might see and report as an academic institution in maybe something like the NIRF innovation rankings, right? So these are also important. They indicate the volume of activity and so on, but eventually all the students have to eventually you know the student group has to create some impact which might be relevant to them. So what could be that impact? So right on the right side, you can see a few that I have put down. The blue ones being the ones which I think are more important, but there are others who might differ on that view. First of all, of course, learning about entrepreneurship, being aware of it, how to get started, getting inspired by other entrepreneurs, and so on and so forth is an important result that you want out of all these activities. But there's something more, which is, I think, very important, which is inculcating the entrepreneurial mindset or the attitude that you need to build entrepreneurial startups. And I'll talk more about this a little bit next in my next slide. But this is something which is of lasting value for students, and it should not be underemphasized, because irrespective of the events they run, the funding they raise, or anything startups get started, I think inculcating the entrepreneurial mindset is a very key objective of this exercise. And this they will carry through in whatever profession they are in or whatever career decisions they take later as well. Picking up leadership, managerial, soft skills is an important practical thing that we see students gain out of this exercise. Very often they don't get a chance to be in such activities and where they can hone their leadership, managerial skills, soft skills, and especially if you're coming from second tier, third tier cities or rural centers and so on and so forth, here are opportunities to build all of these skills as well. Networking is something which is absolutely essential to running a business. You'll be surprised how important networks are in finding business, in creating business, in finding customers, finding investors, finding mentors, and so on and so forth. And this is a platform where one can learn some of these things hands-on. So these three in blue, I think, are probably some of the most important things you can do for students in a student entrepreneurship club, and students themselves can gain the most out of it. They're a little fuzzy in nature. You can't pin it down, but nonetheless, it's quite important. Of course, if they're able to start up their own companies, great. Pursuing entrepreneurship while studying, learning by doing it. It'll be nice to see alumni as entrepreneurs for most academic institutions as well. So these are some goals and impact which you might want to strive towards. What are the activities that will make it possible? There could be talks, interviews, panel discussions that these groups run, workshops, boot camps. There may be some special interest group events. You pick up a theme and run with it and say, let's solve this problem, right? And let's do something about it. There'll be more of networking meetings, chai pe charcha kind of meetings, site visits, attend Thai meetings, which is the Indus Entrepreneurs, which is a network of entrepreneurs, or e-summit, for example, as I told you, at IIT-Bombay, which TEC students used to attend just to broaden their networks and awareness itself, and organize and participate in competitions. So these are some possible activities that can be done. And you may want to show outputs out of them as number of events organized or number of how well it was attended, what is the level of participation that was there, what are the funds raised by the club, what are the student startups founded, where certain technologies advanced to the next level, funds raised by student startups, awards, recognitions, competitions won, and so on. you will notice that these outputs are very well aligned with some of the things that NIRF rankings do for universities. So there's a good incentive for, it's a good reason why universities and institutes should start building out or encouraging these activities and supporting entrepreneurship clubs of students, so that they hit some of these outputs and metrics as well. But overall, in the long term, I think the blue ones on the right is what one should be striving to achieve. But feel free to put down questions in the chat box. I'll try and take them up as we go along, right? So let's talk a little bit about this entrepreneurial mindset. And this is something which I want to leave you with in case some of you are trying to set up these entrepreneurial activities. And this is one of the most important reasons why you may want to do it, cultivate the entrepreneurial mindset among students. First of all, entrepreneurship, there's a lot of element of foresight in it, which is that you have to look for opportunities of the future, right? What are the kind of things, how the world will shape up in the future, and what role will I have in it as an entrepreneur, and what can I see as an opportunity, a problem to solve, basically. Also, scanning opportunities, for example, entrepreneurs are continuously scanning for opportunities. They're looking for ways to they're trying to look for ways, they're continuously looking for opportunities and problems to solve. There's also this whole issue of a problem solution approach. See, when we study in college, in school, very often we are either told facts and information, or we are solving some exercise given to us, but we never bother to say identify a problem that's important and then work on solutions with a variety of different toolkits from wherever they are sourced. It doesn't matter whether you know it or not, you have to source that solution anyway of the toolkit. So that problem solution approach is another very important element of an entrepreneurial mindset. Entrepreneurs have one other very interesting aspect in their behavior, which is that they are very endpoint focused, and so they're not focused on the resources and the constraints because of resources they may face. So they're going to ask the question, what do I want to do and how do I raise that resources for it? Not that I have this much money or this much resources, what can I do with it? And this is a big mindset shift that is needed very often to be an entrepreneur. That means you just want to focus on what you want to achieve, and not on how all you're constrained in achieving that. So there's a positive take on goals in life, which is again a mindset shift. You will end up raising resources and support. It's a very key element of an entrepreneurial mindset. You will have to go and pitch to different people, raise money, and so on and so forth, raise resources, raise support. And you can, as students, one can start by first pitching to your own director and vice chancellor to ensure that there's enough support for the student club itself. There's also this element of initiative and leadership, motivating others, building trust and respect. There aren't too many places where students may get a chance to do this. Maybe they get a chance to in team sports. Maybe they get a chance to do it in some college festivals. But this is another platform, the entrepreneurship club, where they can learn how to do all of these things. And finally, also managing uncertainty and complexity. Most entrepreneurial environments are very complex, and you don't know what is going to happen next. So you continuously are grappling with that uncertainty. And people who cannot handle complexity and uncertainty and risk associated with it very often struggle to be entrepreneurs, because they are expecting everything to be laid out for them in a straight line so that they can execute, right? But on the other hand, as an entrepreneur, you have to deal with complexity. You don't know what is the next big surprise that's going to pop your way and still make it all the way. So these are some elements that you get to learn from an entrepreneurial mindset, from an exercise where you as a student are participating in, say, a entrepreneurship club. And also these are the kind of things that teachers can teach their students when they are trying to build an entrepreneurial mindset amongst their students. There are other reasons why students should be interested. And very often these are things which you get to learn. These are additions to your skill set and your CV, which probably you may or may not get a chance to learn otherwise. So one is you're demonstrating initiative and initiate an activity you care about, provide leadership and motivate others. You have an opportunity to learn management. Again, as I said, deal with complexity, execute a project. Imagine running a program like eSummit, right? You have to raise so much money, you have to publicize it, you have to market it, you have to execute it, you have to bring all those people to the table. Everything has to be done like clockwork, right? And that is an exercise in managing complex projects. And if you do that, I'm sure you can handle many more things as well. Learn to manage people. And the interesting thing here is it's hardest to manage people when everybody's a volunteer. That means there's no other lever you have as a leader to or a manager to manage a team, except that people are willing to work with you. And that happens only in such not-for-profit organizations and clubs. It doesn't happen when in a job or a situation where somebody is getting paid to do something, or has some kind of a carrot and stick associated with their association in that organization. Learn to pitch, attract, gather interest, people who have resources or collect resources, do marketing, build trust and support, learn to manage funds, learn to run meetings and get the work done. This is something very interesting that many students I have seen haven't had a chance to actually run meetings in an organized way and get things done. And in such clubs, they're able to do that if they want to be very systematic and deliver on the objectives. Also, the importance of building a community collective. You demonstrate that you understand the importance of building a community. In interviews, sometimes people ask, okay, tell me something you did which is of a larger consequence, right? What did you do which has a larger consequence, and how did you contribute to it, and how is it going to affect society as a whole? Here is a way to do that. Opportunity to meet and engage mentors, and opportunity to engage with inspirational leaders. So when you organize an event, say if you've invited let's say a very senior entrepreneur to come, like Narayan Murthy or somebody like that, if you're the organizer, you will be engaging with them one-on-one, right? And that is a great opportunity. You're not just an audience, you're the organizer, right? Somebody of that stature is going to be interacting with you one-on-one. I can't think of better ways to meet such people than this. So these are all the reasons why one should be building out these activities. So here's a quick guide to launching a student-led entrepreneurship club. Please note, I said student-led. The idea is to have students lead this activity. Faculty can facilitate, can make it possible, but it's important that the students drive this activity on their own. So if you're a faculty member or somebody who is a mentor, you want to the step one is to try and identify some student champions for this activity, right? Those people who can take a lead and drive this. Identify a team of say 3+ students with keen interest in entrepreneurship. And how will we locate them? These are the people who will see senior entrepreneurs as their role models and inspiration figures. If somebody is really excited about, say, what Elon Musk is doing, and the kind of exciting projects that he's taking up, that person might have a keen interest in entrepreneurship. Or if somebody is really keen and interested or respects Kiran Majumdar-Shaw and what she's doing with Biocon, that is the kind of person who might be interested in contributing to such an activity. On the other hand, in most academic environments, you might find a lot of people who say have only people who have done either, their role models are from science or academia and so on and so forth. They may or may not value entrepreneurs as much, so they may not necessarily be the right people to drive this activity. And in that role, they need to be willing to take initiative, commit some time in organizing activities and events, share it with others in their student group and community, and they will see a value in learning, networking, and preparing the ground for their own startups in the future. And that is something which I would look for, if I was setting up a student entrepreneurship club, I would look for students who are really keen on doing any of these, value these kind of role models or interested in these kind of activities. Step 2 of our recipe from Venture Center is to take a few key decisions, right? So you need to make a short slide deck. If the student group is in place, a club, name of the club, the mission and core purpose, activities the club will undertake, and the desired outputs, outcomes, impact, right? And I've given you a little bit of a flavor of some of that, but you can think through this. Intention is not to be exhaustive here. A few very important decisions. Will it be entirely student driven, right? All the stakeholders, including the faculty involved or the university, has to agree to this. There may be situations where a university may think that they're better off nominating people to those positions, or it might actually be something where the student group elects, right? It's up to you, right? How it is done. But in an entirely student driven activity, it should be student led as far as possible, rather than necessarily controlled by faculty. Does this activity have the support of the director of the institute or vice chancellor? What all can the director commit? Is the director willing to commit some things like an annual grant and a project code if some initial expenditure is needed? Can the director commit some funds? The director also has to identify one nodal person, a faculty touch point, who will help, who will promote this activity within the organization. In most cases, there is either a faculty advisor or a faculty touch point who is responsible for this particular activity, especially from the administration point of view. The admin processes to support fundraising, procurement. If you raise money, do you know where it will be deposited, how it will be utilized by the club? All that processes are in place or not, right? And venues, availability of venues, in-kind support, maybe a club office, and so on. Many universities, if a student initiative is launched and a club is created, they may allocate a certain fund to it, with the faculty being responsible for operating it, with the students actually running the show, but with the administrative responsibility being with the faculty member. So this will be the next step typically. So in this, there will be many other questions which will come up. So one of the suggestions we have made in the past is to the club members that if you are going to run an entrepreneurship club, run it like any other business, right? You learn a lot more as a team, as an executive committee team, running the club like any other company. You don't have to incorporate it, but imagine that it is a company and run it. So have the similar kind of structures, follow all the nuts and bolts which typically most companies follow. So this way, there will be people can get a sense of how a company actually works while being executive members of the club as well. So I'll give you some examples as we go along of how it can be done. The faculty touch point, whoever it is, has to be very supportive of entrepreneurship and should think highly of entrepreneurs. They also should, value the fact that there are people like Elon Musk or Kiran Majumdar-Shaw there who shaped society. If their role models are only academics and they play down everybody else, then it's a very difficult situation for the entrepreneurship club. So it's important to pick that faculty touch point who values entrepreneurship and doesn't belittle it in any way. There are places where sometimes entrepreneurs, there's a misconception that entrepreneurship is only about making money, and that there is a negative connotation associated with some of these activities, which is not a healthy situation to be in. They should be willing to put in some time to attend few meetings and advise the student group. they should be able to arrange resources. So very often this faculty touch point will bat for the club with the director or the vice chancellor, and they should be okay to use his or her network and contacts to get help for the club. Very often we have seen faculty touch points also arrange some funding through even corporate, some industry folks, by calling up and making the right connects for the student group. Allowing This should also allow the students to run the club. They're guides, not necessarily doing it themselves, and willing to be the faculty face for fundraising or grant proposals. Very often in grant proposals and funding proposals, you will find that the funder wants to see somebody who they can rely on. I mean, who has greater credibility or a history or a track record, and that can often be the faculty face, because they bring in this sense that they're a little more seasoned in terms of their experiences in handling money, in being able to understand the importance of processes, have some maybe even familiarity with the funder, and so on and so forth. The faculty touch point also plays an important role of being the faculty face for fundraising and grant proposals that the club might write as well. Again, if anybody has any questions, please keep typing on the chat box. I will take it up as we go along. There's also some support needed from the institute, and the club has to tie it up. So this can be done with even it's sometimes informal, but sometimes formally approved by the director or vice chancellor. You might need some funds for, say, costs of speakers, some travel costs, mementos, gifts, prizes, publicity materials, event refreshments, and so on and so forth. Now, in the very beginning, before you start, when you're starting, you may not have external funders, in which case you might need to raise this money from internal sources from the university itself. In-kind resources are also extremely important. It's not just funds. The university supports it by, say, providing venues, by providing guest hospitality and logistics, use of the institute phone, net, etc. The faculty touch points, time, right? The club office, if they give you an office, that's another resource that you get to have access to as well. So these are some things which a student club may want to negotiate and get right up front from the director, commitment saying that these are things we need, right? As a club, please provide those, and we will take care of some of the other logistics related to various activities that we will perform, which we will take up, right? So step 3 is a founding documents. Now we recommend that, as I told you, we recommend that the student clubs should be created, should be run like a company. It's a good exercise to have. But even besides that, what happens is typically sometimes a club gets started and then there is no process by which it is continued in the next year after the students leave, say, that institute. So in which case, it's a good idea to have a formal process in place. So typically companies have something called a memorandum of association and articles of association, and societies have equivalents called constitution and bylaws, right? It's a good idea, even if you're not a registered organization, to put these together. And there will be an initial bunch of members. I have, in one of the slides, I also have a link to the founding documents of couple of clubs that I mentioned, but you can of course find that, right? And initial members, initial board, you need to decide who will be the board. There will be some members who will be part of the body of members of the general body of this organization, and initial board and initial executive team. Typically, shareholders or members will vote the board, and the board is responsible for governance, whereas the executive team is responsible for day-to-day operations of the company, right? And you need to set up a few key processes. One is, of course, your faculty touchpoint interface. So whenever you have a bill, whose signature you need, all that has to be clear, right? But also mechanism to approve and bill costs within the institute. So you need to know what kind of purchase process to follow, how to bill things, all of that according to whatever is allowed by your institution. So these are some of the initial documents that are put together. I have a couple of examples here, and these basically have a quick summary of what is of documents which people have put together as well. If you Google it, you should be able to find these as well as the documents which are the founding documents of this organization, right, of this club. Okay, what will be the organogram? The organogram looks like this. There's a general body of members. So these are the people who are members of the club, who will, put in place a board, and executive team will run the organization. You could think of a CEO who is also the head of all planning activities, strategy, secretary, who's responsible for making sure that all the meetings happen, the meeting minutes are noted, the decisions are recorded, actions are taken on it and reported. So they're keeping everybody together basically as a secretary. Treasurer responsible for the money, and events, somebody would lead events, somebody would lead publicity and outreach, and you could have many more depending upon what kind of activities you're going to drive. So this is roughly the structure of a club that you might run as well. You can also think of a board. Since the organization, your host institution or your university is committing resources, I would strongly recommend that the chair of the board should be the director or the dean of one of student affairs or R&D of the institute, because they will need to back the club up from time to time, right? With resources, with connects, and so on and so forth. And it also brings a level of seriousness to this activity. It's not something which is left aside to float around, but it's a very important activity of the institute. Is a signal that is being sent by having the chair as a director or the dean of the institute. You can have your faculty touch point as a member. You can have, I would also suggest that if you have an alumni who is an entrepreneur and is very keen to support this activity, or is willing to bat for it in the board, that person would be good to have. The CEO and the treasurer and the secretary could be other members, with the secretary being the convener of these meetings. And you can plan your meetings accordingly. If you're doing an executive committee for this club, these are the kind of roles that you might have in the club. I am intentionally calling it the CEO. You can call it president, whatever that you want to call it the club. But I think it's good to have it running like a company. The CEO is the final. The buck stops with the CEO, and the final decision has to be there. But the setting the pace, the standards, the number of activities, all of those, CEO has an important role to play in building consensus among the entire team. So the overall planning responsibility, identifying opportunities, resources, and initiating activities are key responsibility. Reporting to the board, passing the baton to the next batch, and having a strong communicator for the club who can speak for the club, rally people, bring them to be part of the activity as well. That's the kind of person you need as a CEO. Secretary is very disciplined, right? Usually calls meetings, documents them, follows up actions, puts out the action taken report, ensures membership, follows a process to ensure that people are formally recorded as members of the club. The treasurer is somebody who's managing funds, billings, processing payment orders, processing sponsorships received, provide financial reports at meetings, and help fundraising. That's the role of the treasurer. And then, of course, people who can be running events or publicity and outreach. And you can have multiple people depending upon the size of your operations and how many people you want to involve. It's a good idea to involve more people in the executive team as required, because people then get more deeply engaged and contribute to the activities over a period of time. So planning of events is one, but the other is also media, social media, posters, banners, campaigns, mailing lists, WhatsApp groups. All of this will come under the publicity and outreach activities of this. Okay, so what are the activities that you want to plan in a student group? And what would you do as an activity plan? So you'll drop an activity plan, preferably say for the whole year, considering holidays, exam periods, new admissions, etc. And this is something which requires to be thought through carefully, especially in undergraduate institutions, as people come in, go out, and there are busy periods, stretches when you don't want to do anything else. we do advise people that do not be too ambitious. One event per quarter may be a good starting point, and also put down when the new executive team will take over, and put down when you'll have a membership drive, put down when you'll have board meetings, and make sure activities align with the outcomes you wish to achieve. So if it's a talk, it should be clear it's about inspiration, it's about information, it's about building networks, whatever it is. But if it's a challenge or a competition, then your people are learning by doing, and that's the purpose that you're trying to achieve as well. It could be any of those activities. If you're raising money, it's also you're learning how to pitch and raise money along the way. So those are the kind of outcomes that you're trying to achieve for a student group trying to pursue these activities. Here are some possible activities. We listed some of them. You saw some of them in when I mentioned the 3 entrepreneurship clubs that I talked about: talks, workshops, mentoring clinics, networking events, organized competitions, including hackathons, right? Participation and exposure. You could participate in competitions, business plan competitions. For example, some students have, there's something called the biotech area. There's ABLE BEST, which runs every year. People can participate in those kind of activities. There's some technology innovation oriented other programs, like this organization called Shristi out of Ahmedabad runs something called GYTI, and so on. So there are many such programs that one can participate in. You could also organize internships in startups if you're really interested. Some of these internships give you an opportunity to, in a short period of time, learn quite a bit rather than be boxed in a very, very specialized small role, which you might get in larger entities. And actually by doing it, right, that build teams, get started with a new company. If some of the students are really keen on building a company while they are in college or school, they could do it. It's a matter of putting the team, the business idea, technology, and money together, and making sure there's a mentor who guides them through that process as well. So these are some activities which you can consider for your entrepreneurship club. Financials are very important for for these activities to happen. You will notice if you go to the ECEL site of IIT-Bombay, you'll see several sponsors being lined up for various activities. So clearly, somebody would have put a case together, pitched it to those sponsors, found those sponsors, convinced them that it's worth funding, that they'll get reach to so many students in one shot. All of that has happened, right? So it takes efforts to do that. But first, let's understand the costs, right? So there will be a bunch of costs that you need to plan for, and this will include travel, guest hospitality, events, honorarium, gifts, mementos, publicity materials, and so on. And when you're running all these costs, you have to have a plan for financing it. There can be some grant support from your institute, but it's good learning, in my opinion, if you're raising sponsorships. You may learn also by putting in an event fee or a membership fee without becoming a barrier, and maybe even some corporate grants, donations, which may be possible. And if you have a corpus, you may be able to, if somebody has given you a corpus as a club, you may be able to even get some income out of it as well. And this can happen when alumni are involved. Alumni might, some senior alumni might provide you with a corpus to get working on some of these fronts. And this has happened in some of the larger institutions, older institutions that I have seen as well. Right. Step 4 is about announcing the club, right? And I think this, most of you would be masters of websites, social media, WhatsApp, posters, and mailing lists. And this basically announces the club, and you're ready for your first event and membership drive. With this, the first event should be used for membership drives, clearly, but should also draw the right crowd, create visibility. You want to use it, to make sure that there's enough interest in the organization. Of course, don't go by one event, but it will be a good idea to do it in such a way at the right time, such that students who are curious or who want to participate join in as members. And for that, you will need, say, good speakers, participating, and for that you need referrals and networks, and for which you should tap your mentors and advisors and faculty to bring in the right people to interest them. It might bring in some money via sponsorships and so on. And this is an opportunity to do a membership drive. So you need to be clear again in a membership drive, what are the benefits to participants. So for example, people who are becoming a member might get free access to many workshops or talks. They may get access to events where there might be other goodies involved, or they may be able to participate in certain competitions which have interesting prices and other benefits. So you need to communicate that to people about what the membership benefits will bring. There'll be a membership form, a fee, there's a mechanism to collect it and so on, which you need to put in place as an organization right away. And finally, step 8, right? So here, as um, as um, as an organization, you need to have useful, productive work meetings and get job done, right? And this is where we see the leadership qualities of the CEO, the secretary coming into play. They have to ensure that it's regularly done, meetings happen, people take it seriously, some work happens, an agenda is put together, there's some actions decided, action taken, reports are reported, and so on, so that everybody feels that there's something happening and it's not just a waste of time of a meeting happening with no result at the end of the day. And it's the secretary's job to record all of those things, right, in terms of keeping track of it and making sure things happen. If somebody takes on a responsibility and action is decided, it should get executed. And that is something which will only happen if you regularly track it and follow it up in every meeting. So send out the records regularly and track the progress. This is good exercise for most people who want to learn how to manage such events and such activities, complex activities, as well as learn to run events effectively. And if somebody drops the ball, others have to jump in, and that's another task for the leadership team to figure out how to make that happen. And of course, this is all volunteering activities, so recognize and applaud outstanding efforts of your volunteering friends as well. There are a few funding programs which are available. I've listed a few, and some supporting programs as well. Of course, this reflects my information, but there are definitely many more as well. So the first one on the top is a program which DST runs, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. It's called the New Gen Innovation and Entrepreneurship Development Center. This is available on the NSTDB site, and the only thing is that their calls come depending upon it happens not so regularly, in the sense not a fixed schedule. So that is a challenge. But that said, this is something which is an attractive funding pocket for EDCs, entrepreneurship development cells, or in effect, it is essentially an entrepreneurship club. The AICTE also has some funding. You can find this at this link out here. They call it EDCs. The Ministry of Micro, Small, Medium Enterprises also has a few entrepreneurship and skill development programs which align with some of these activities that you may wish to do in a student entrepreneurship club. There are also some other support and encouragement mechanisms. The Vadhwani Foundation runs Ignite, which you can tie up with as a student club, and they will be willing to help you set up some of the initial activities, and also give you some resources to get started with training and so on and so forth. Resources also of a soft nature in terms of content. The GDC in IIT Madras also runs some programs which are aimed at students, and you can make use of it. The other good thing that's happened is that the government has put setting up such an entrepreneurship club or a startup cell as an important part of the NIRF rankings. So every university and institute has some motivation, some reason to help set this up as well. So this is a quick look at the funding programs. So I think with that, I'm done. I'll take any questions if there are any. Otherwise, this was just a quick overview of how you could launch your own student entrepreneurship club, either as a student or as a faculty member, right? So I'll stop sharing here. Floor is open to questions, please.
Yeah, if there are any questions, please feel free to raise your hands. We can unmute you and you can ask your question also. Meanwhile, we have also pasted the feedback link in the chat box. So please do give your feedback here. All the talks in this series and the earlier wave, they are available on techx.in's YouTube channel, and that link is also pasted in the chat box by Sharwali. So please feel free to look up the earlier talks also, which we have already completed.
There were a couple of questions which Mugdha had sent me in advance, sent by somebody. So let me take those up. So EC is under the TBI here. What distinct activities should the EC perform, right? So the business incubator is different from the entrepreneurship cell. As I see it, the entrepreneurship cell is largely led by students typically, and it's focused more on some of the outcomes and impact which I had put down. Incubation takes a little larger view of things, including trying to build an ecosystem to support some of these startups, actual facilities, arranging resources, mentoring, all of those kind of activities. So there's slight difference in the nature. I think I'll come to the other questions. Mihir, you have a question, you can go ahead.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Yeah.
So I'm Mihir Gandhi, and I'm from NIT Surat in fourth year, and we have recently established our ECL over there. And of course, as the Gujarat having been an hub for the startups and all, so can you please suggest me some way to go about doing some events or reaching out to other startups and businesses, as the Diamond Bourse is now here, Gift City is coming, and many other initiatives. So how, as I, the head of that ECell, and also the whole team, we can leverage out this whole ecosystem, and what should be our approach to make this ECell very good?
Yeah. So my question first to you would be, what is in your events, what do you want to achieve, right? Do you see, for example, I gave you a couple of examples. One is to look at your own student population and say that we want more startups coming up. We want them to be aware of entrepreneurship and so on. Or to take a little larger view like IIT-Bombay's student cell is doing, saying that we will promote it nationally, right? And bring in all the colleges and so on. So these are the examples, right? So what is your objective as ECell? What
Yes,
would
sir.
be, and don't,
Of course.
and just a quick point, if I was to tell you to pick only two, you should tell me, right? Don't, temptation is to say we want to do this also, you want to do that also, right?
Yes,
Then
sir,
it
I
doesn't
would be
work.
very yes, sir. So I would
Yeah.
be very specific. The first of all, very first objective is that we are sitting into the heart of the Surat city, and so having this such a dynamic ecosystem of business and startups, we want to leverage that out for the college itself, for the students and also the college. So that is a very first aim, which we were not able to do it to that extent up till now. So leveraging out that whole pool of opportunities, that business and startup opportunities. And the second very well is what we want to be known as, that if this is one of the colleges in Gujarat where the entrepreneurship culture is very good in all terms. So
Yeah.
as the location wise, Surat is, there are you having many opportunities for funding as well as business connections, and also other type of help from
Yeah.
the college is given. So all not nationally as of now, very initially, but at least at the state level, we would be like to be recognized as one of the hubs of that entrepreneurship culture.
Yes. Okay, good. So let's look at a few goals and then see how you can execute using events, right? So first of all, if you have a lot of students who want to be entrepreneurs themselves and want to get started while in college, right? Uh, there are a few things which you may want to look at. One is very often startup founders need to look and continuously look for new problems, definitions for which they want to come up with solutions which will create a business, right? How do they come to know those problems? So if the diamond bourse is there, what are the kind of needs that they have which can be served, right? And therefore a business can be built. You will remember, and what are the kind of opportunities available? You'll remember, or you might be aware that the Indian coronary stent industry came out of, largely the fact that people were working with these lasers for diamonds, right? Are you familiar with that, Mihir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. So exposing your students to problem definition. So the question is, how do you get that exposure done? So events which are focused on problem definitions and engaging with your ecosystem to come up with many more things that need to be done and opening it out to people is one possibility, right? Another is the networks. So for example, if there are investors, high network individuals available, how do they come to know that there is a student startup out there which is worthy of being invested? How will you build those networks? How will you connect with them? What are the mechanisms? So for example, if there is a Thai chapter in Surat, right, are they engaging with you? Are industry associations engaging with you, right, as a student organization? Are you creating mechanisms by which the people who can fund these businesses are meeting these startups, and can these startups pitch to them, and who can bring all of them together in one place so that those startups can pitch to some of those funders or potential investors in that location, right? So these might be some of the activities which you can do to leverage your local ecosystem, and yet and on the back of that build some track record for your entrepreneurship club as well. So you can pick on those, you can pick on themes which Surat is big in, and then uh, even bring in nationally various people who can provide solutions for some of those sectors where you think Surat can stand out, right? So here are some suggestions. I don't know if I answered your question, but this is a longer discussion, so I'll stop here with that. Does that answer your question?
Mihir, you can unmute. I think you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, sir, absolutely.
Yeah.
So just a small quick note from my side that we being our college is around 60 years old. So being a national institute, we were established from 61. We have a very good alumni base, but whatever may be the reason, the whole strong ecosystem was not being reflected inside of the college.
Hmm.
So that is one of the major purposes of me being taking an initiative to get this done. And of
Yeah.
course, your insights are
Are
very
you? I
useful.
hope you are bringing all the alumni to your campus who are
Yes, sir, that's one of
entrepreneurs.
one of the major things in on my mind, that there are many alums who are sitting. I don't know where they are, but at some very good positions who can help the students, new budding entrepreneurs, and who are interested in that. So that should be very much helpful for us as a
Yeah.
college and also for the students.
Yeah, and that they are a big support for many students in colleges. I don't know if you know, but the first incubator in IIT-Bombay was actually funded by Nandan Nilankani and Kanwal Rekhi, right? And much before the government even supported it. So this is a great opportunity for all of you to tap into as well. Okay, so let me just take another quick question out here. Tulshi has asked, can any non-academic organization like a registered society or trust establish an entrepreneurship center? Well, today's session was on entrepreneurship, student-led entrepreneurship clubs. You can even, there are places which are focused entirely on entrepreneurship, including independent trusts and societies. So you can do all of those. Vadhwani Foundation, for example, I think is structured as a trust probably, or a society, which is basically promoting entrepreneurship in the country. There are other not-for-profits, including the Venture Center, which is a not-for-profit, which is set up as a Section 8 company, which promotes entrepreneurship as well. But of course, a student-led entrepreneurship club is different from, say, an incubator. Okay, so the roles are different. So just keep in mind what you're trying to do, because if you're setting up an incubator, there's a lot more commitment needed over a period of time to assets, to ecosystem development, and so on and so forth. It is a larger commitment for the institute or academic organization than an entrepreneurship, student entrepreneurship club. Okay, so it should be clear what you wish to achieve. And that's something which you should keep in mind. So the answer to you is yes, right? Okay, there's one more question I saw: how to motivate students to start a club. Yeah, so one of my slides was about what they can get out of it. See, today's real challenge is that students are doing multiple things. They have multiple distractions, multiple activities which they could be doing. And that becomes a challenge for most people, because if you think this is important, you need to find people who think this is important and drive it. So that's why I started off by saying that you need to find those three people who think entrepreneurship is important and have leading entrepreneurs as their role models, right? And if that is the case, then they will be the nucleus for seeding this activity. If not, it becomes very difficult in a situation where people are not interested at all. Of course, as educators and as foundations, you may want to motivate people by showing them some case studies. In the case of NCL, for example, National Chemical Laboratory, where there are a lot of PhD students, and one of the things we wanted to point out to them was that there are very illustrious alumni who have become entrepreneurs and who've done very well for themselves, like Dr. Reddy's, Anji Reddy of Dr. Reddy's lab, and so on and so forth. So that is the kind of things which sometimes motivates people, because at the end of the day, they want to do something useful with their life, something which will utilize their full potential. And here is an opportunity to do it compared to many other opportunities that might exist. And that is what I think people will drive people to participate in such activities. Lima, you have a question, please. You can unmute.
Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead.
My name is Lima Rose. I'm a faculty from VIT Vellore.
Mhm.
I have two questions to ask you. First thing is we have an operating e-cell, but most of the time what they do is promotional activities. They have competitions, pitching sessions, and there ends the effort. So students come, they pitch in an idea, and they leave. At the end of the third year, fourth year, they are going for placements, and that's all. The entrepreneurship dream is gone. They're all strengthening and polishing their CVs, and they're off to the US or somewhere else. So this is a huge issue that we are facing as educators. Although there's a lot of, like you said, government is giving a lot of money and there's a lot of promotion happening from the institution.
Yeah.
As teachers, we're finding it extremely challenging to retain young talent and help them to be entrepreneurs. There is a lot of fear, I think, culturally. There is a lot of fear that entrepreneurs don't succeed. So how do we as educators tackle this?
Yeah, so in fact, when I was talking about this, I told you what do you want to achieve, right? As a person running an entrepreneurship club, and I had marked these three things on the right? So, see, different people have a different appetite for entrepreneurship, right? Um, we don't, I mean, and some of them will do it at a much later stage in their careers. So even that exposure to an entrepreneurial mindset might be quite valuable. So VIT, for example, has several of their alumni who are entrepreneurs today. But do you think they got started only while they were there at Vellore? Probably not, right? They would have also done it later in their careers, right? So I think as educators, we need to take a larger view first, okay? Because we have also seen even in NCL kind of environments that there are students who go out, do their PhDs, finish their postdocs, and then come back to start something, right? Because their opportunity cost and their context in which they came, entrepreneurship appears too risky for them. Okay. So
Right.
I take a longer view. First of all, that's first thing that you can do. The second thing is sometimes expecting so they do, so one should not confuse doing tech innovation or tech development projects with entrepreneurship, right? Entrepreneurship is is a much longer journey where one is committed to the startup. So we can differentiate that also. So for example, if you have a hackathon and somebody comes up with a solution, doesn't mean all members of the hackathon team are likely to be interested in building a business out of it, right? Or that it's going to end up in that as well. So the question is, how do I get something useful out of the hackathon? In which case, you should be bringing in team members who have already made the call to be an entrepreneur, and not only limited to the students who are there, right?
Right.
So why can't we put a larger team together, which includes people who already made the call to be an entrepreneur, right? And have students participate in it, because the students are not necessarily going to be, all of them going to be committed to entrepreneurship, right? So I think it's if we set it up to expect that all those people who participate in this will become entrepreneurs, I think we will be disappointed, right? So
Right.
I would suggest that let's look at a little longer time frame where they build that entrepreneurial mindset, right? And it helps in many different aspects of their careers. Some of them will step out of industry jobs that they take up and become entrepreneurs. If you look at Bangalore, a lot of entrepreneurs are coming out of companies where they were in cushy jobs, but they decided that they want to do something different and stepped out to start a company, right? So I think that also is a very valuable contribution that we are making. I don't want to just get stuck up with only startups that come straight out of college. Okay, it could be later as well. But that said, it changes mindsets of people. It brings in a lot of networks for students. Many of these students will go on to at least remember that here was a person I met who seemed to be enjoying their work or found it challenging. Maybe that's a career that I should take up, and so on, right? So that's all that I can tell you right now. I wish there was an easier way to do it. In hackathons and so on, we do believe that we should have other people coming in, students participating, but not necessarily being a full student team, because many of them fall apart. And placement season is a good killer of all these things.
Rightly pointed, yes.
So I can't give you a better answer on that,
I have
unfortunately.
no complaints against placement, because all of us wanted that at some point. Even as youngsters, we wanted to be placed. But the problem is, if you really have so like you said, we should look at the larger picture and push them towards that futuristic goal. No, so one day they will look at it.
And someday alumni will come back and tell their story and inspire some more students. And as the situation changes in some of these in India, people will be more willing to take risk, right?
So should we allow alumni to come back? So we have an ESL, we have an incubation. I'm sure you know, Bala sir. We have an incubation unit. We also have an Office of Innovation, Entrepreneurship, Startups, and Tech Transfer. All of this is there. Should we allow graduates who already passed out to come back and incubate and work with us while they are working without leaving their jobs? Is that possible anyway? Policy-wise, does it happen?
Yeah, so the first part of the question is, should you allow people who have graduated to come back, right? Which I think there's no problem there. I mean, I think you should. There are some startups which so IIT-Bombay used to do alumni, staff, students before, right? Now it's open to more people, but alumni was always there. Why not alumni, right? They are your assets, and they'll help you build some very important companies. In fact, some of the IIT-Bombay, the unicorns which got incubated, there were one or two are alumni companies. Okay, so I think it is worth doing. You should definitely leverage your alumni. Now, whether they can do it when they are working elsewhere or not, that is a question of ethics, right? So in the question of whether they are staying within the rules or not, right? So if their job allows them to do it, fine. If they don't, then you should tell them that they need to solve all those problems. Then only you can help them out, right? Otherwise, you're wasting your time in a situation which can get dirty.
So there are some kids who come and tell me, ma'am, I'm placed already, but I also have a startup idea. What do I do about it? And I say, you should go back to your company and ask them if they let you But 90% of the companies do not allow students to have a startup while they're working because they feel their attention is divided. So
Yeah, but
that way
there
they
are
won't be able
people
to.
who incubate their ideas at their home, right? In a low key without any legal entity and so on and so
That's
forth.
that's what I wanted to ask you. So
Yeah,
in what
but
way
if
we
they're
can?
not, yeah, as long as there's no conflict, right?
Right.
Uh, People see the conflict of interest arises in certain cases, right? Where
Mhm,
it's the same domain that the company works in where you're working. But
mhm.
if there are no conflicts, there are many companies who allow that, right? You can always advance your ideas, whether it's a commercial idea or not, that's a different matter. In sense, is it already commercial or is it just being incubated as an idea, right? If you set up a
Right.
company, then again you might be violating some rules of the company of the where you're employed, right?
Right. Right.
Right. If
Right.
you're violating any
Mm.
confidentiality or IP rules, then you're again violating rules, right? So you have to
Right.
they have to read those terms and understand what is allowed and what is not, and speak to their HR to understand that before doing it, and keep it transparent. I mean, that's what I think you should advise them, right? It's
Mm.
up to there'll be different cases, they'll have to deal with it differently. So
Right.
anyway,
We need more. I mean, I particularly need more advice on this. So
sure,
I'll
we
connect
can
with
talk separately.
Mugda
Yeah,
and yeah,
yeah.
later on I can talk.
Yeah, so let me just take a couple of quick other questions, which
Yeah.
is Anita
Thank you.
here has, thank you. Anita has written, I represent India Value Engineering Society. We would like to connect to the students, colleges to help them out the entrepreneur journey with workshops and master classes. What is your suggestion to us? Yes. I think you should look at models similar to what some of the foundations are also doing, and see how you can stand out in terms of workshops and master classes. May very often these master classes are needed, but you need to distinguish yourself in terms of how you'll be different. And typically, organizations such as yours may be able to bring in experts who have done it themselves, right? Startups or founders who have done it themselves. If you can bring experienced people to the table, that's a great value add for most student clubs, who very often don't have access to people who have deep, in-depth practical experience, not theoretical experience necessarily. Okay. Um, One other question here is, I don't know the name, but I'm a first year student, so should focus on studies or side by side, or we should participate in different competitions. Okay, so this is a question for many students, right? You need, I mean, you have to, of course, you're there to study as a student, but you're also here to get educated for your life, right? Uh, for your own life and career. So you have to strike a balance somewhere where you're not ignoring your studies, but at the same time learning some of these other things which I mentioned to you. For example, in these slides, I had put down some of these things in this slide which you're seeing just now. I can tell you that it is very hard to learn some of these things from classroom sessions, right? These are some things which you have to learn by doing, and you have to find mechanisms to do that. Many of us have done all this as students, so it's not impossible. You have to find the right balance between your studies and learning some of these things. They are lifelong lessons which will come handy not only in entrepreneurship but in everything else that you do. So this is something which I think I would encourage you to do that without going overboard. I think it's important in for most Indian families to consider doing good in studies and going ahead as well. Uh, not everybody can take decisions like Bill Gates to leave Harvard and pursue entrepreneurship full time. But I think this is a very specific. This is specific to people's circumstances, not to be taken. Not there's no formula to it. Okay, it has to be done on a case to case basis. Okay. There's another question here from Shivtej. I think probably in tier 3 cities, how do we do this? What obstacles we expect along the way? How can we overcome them? So the only point I will suggest to you here is the only difference. So the real issue in tier 3 and rural centers is the lack of an ecosystem to support entrepreneurship. That means you need many pieces of the puzzle in one place. They are not there, unlike a Bangalore or Pune and so on and so forth. So I think what you have to do is to leverage other ecosystems. So you should find a way by which you can leverage the ecosystem in another location by finding well-wishers, partners, foundations who help you do that. And that extended ecosystem, and by the way, this ecosystem can be anywhere. So for example, in a particular topic, if you're interested, that ecosystem can be outside India also. Okay, so don't limit yourself. It's only a matter of getting pieces of the puzzle into place. Like if you need to do say biomed entrepreneurship, you need certain things in the place, and that you can get from where you need. If you need funding, that funding can come from multiple sources, right? It's not necessary that you have to be in a tier 1 city per se, right? So my suggestion would be only that just extend your, find well-wishers and partners in other ecosystems and leverage them. That would be the best thing that we can do. There's another question point, I think, that Anita has made your volunteers from industry. Yes, I think anybody who is contributing to this exercise, I think, is great. People who can actually help build this ecosystem are doing great service to all these students out here as well. So I think with that, Mugdha, are we done with the questions?
Yes, the questions in the chat box and the raised hands are over. So we can stop for today. Let me remind everyone, the feedback link is still there in the chat box. So please do give your feedback before you leave this session today. So with this, happy festive season to all of you. This is the, for the year 2023, this is the last talk. So we will meet again in the new year. A very happy, healthy and productive new year to each and every one of you. Happy New Year 2024. So meet you on 9th of January, which is the second Tuesday of Jan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.